continue with the story now. Jennifer Smout from the Commission for Gender Equality joins us from our Cape Town studios. Jennifer, thanks very much for your time on the rundown. You might have heard me discussing this with my colleague Lindsay Dentlinger, who is covering that story for us from Parliament. It's a welcome development in the fight against gender-based violence, but we've had these incredibly alarming rates of rape, of sexual offences in the country for a very long time. Has the President, has government been slow in reacting in the way it has over the past just couple of weeks?
Thank you. I think the challenge is not about the government's reaction. All in all, South Africa has incredible legislation and policy. The challenge is really in the fiscal allocation around budgets, making sure that our specialised services are properly funded, and also in our prevention services. I mean, the Institute for Security Studies did a report about 2 years ago that found that we're spending billions of rands each year on a criminal justice system response, but a very paltry amount on prevention services. So that's addressing the root causes of violence, such as patriarchal norms, overcrowding, and terrible living conditions for many people in South Africa. And I think it is incredible that we're having this joint sitting today. We can't undervalue that this is the first time that such a thing has happened. I'm very interested to hear the debates and the proposals. For me, it's really about consolidation now. It's about what is working and how do we fix what's not working. We know that if you cannot go to a post office to collect a package without facing rape and murder, that any amount of criminal justice system response will always be too late.
Yeah, and I mean, Jennifer, when you talk about the fact that we have all of this great legislation, we have all of these great strategies on paper, the one thing that comes to mind for me is the issue around the Tutuzela centres that could play such an important role in the fight against gender-based violence, in how we deal with rape survivors in particular, but those as well underfunded. We're hearing about many of those centres not functioning optimally at all.
Of course. I mean, the Tutuzela care centres are one of the most valuable assets that we have, in that they're a one-stop service for survivors. So you lose out on the risks of challenges that you face when you're reporting at an ordinary police station or healthcare facility. But as you rightly say, they are underfunded at the moment. Never mind the Tutuzela care centres themselves being underfunded, we don't have a plan to fund them in the future. We also are facing a challenge where we are attempting to roll out sexual offences courts, for example, which are incredible and have shown great success in prosecuting cases when compared to normal courts. But we know that the justice system is going to have to close down 87 regular courts due to budget cuts. We also know that our prosecution, then the NPA, is underfunded and will have to cut prosecutors over the next 3 years. So I think when we're talking about taking this seriously, and if we, without the allocation of resources, it's not taking it seriously at all. And we know that the National Strategic Plan, for example, on violence is currently being consulted on by the Department of Women following the summit that we had last year. But on the 3rd of September, the Department of Women came to Parliament and said that there wasn't any budget for the NSP rollout in this financial year. So unless we start to put our money where our mouth is and we give the resources to the interventions that we know make a difference, we aren't going to be in a different situation last year. And whilst the parliamentary sitting might be exceptional, the levels of violence that we're seeing are not. They've been this way for decades.
Absolutely. Jennifer, what are you hoping to hear from the President and from this debate today, aside from better allocation of budgets? Yes, that's one very important issue. But around how we teach our children in school, our children who grow up to be the men and women of this country, around the attitudes of police officers and the people who should be the first responders, for survivors to have that faith to go to a police station and know they will get the help that they need, around forensic departments and DNA testing kits, around rape kits, the levels of violence against women and children, just the horror associated with the attacks, as we've heard over the past few weeks. They're just they blow the mind. What needs to be done when there are so many different legs to this challenge?
Well, I think one of the most strategic interventions that we would hope to see going forward is some sort of joint mandate to address this. So what we currently have is the way our departments budget and operate is in a siloed fashion. So the Department of Justice will get a budget, SAPS will get a budget, DSD, but we don't see a connected response that is connected by a joint budget or a joint oversight strategy. So I would hope that we would see some sort of focus on how do we do this as a collection of departments rather than individual interventions. And then at the same time, from the parliamentary side, what we'd want to see, there would be a joint and concerted oversight instead of patchwork piecemeal interventions. It was very positive to hear today that corporal punishment has been banned, because I think the research has made clear time and time again the links between children who experience and witness violence in their home and those who later go on to perpetrate violence. So whilst implementing this ruling on corporal punishment might be technically difficult, it's a valuable message that we won't tolerate violence against children, which means we will have less violence in the future. So I would like to hear the President make clear linkages between these rulings today and the levels of violence. I would like to hear about joint budgets, joint oversight, and I would like to hear about how we're going to go about addressing prevention, because unless our strategy to addressing prevention changes, we won't see any changes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks very much for your time. Jennifer Smout is from the Commission for Gender Equality. For the very first time, President Cyril Ramaphosa convening both houses of Parliament to discuss gender-based violence. He will give an address at 2 o'clock, as we understand it, and then the floor opens for a debate for around 2 hours.